Hey Daniel, nice to say hi.
Hey Kevin,
by. Appreciate
good
it.
to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while. We've sure seen a bunch of changes in the Microsoft world, haven't we, over the years?
Over the past few years especially.
Yeah, and so then again, yesterday another big announcement, one Microsoft, or Microsoft 365.
Huge announcement, so it makes you rethink how you're doing some of the services around those three areas.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And so we just recently reconnected with BindTuning here, and kind of bringing an offering to Dell that's a little different than the traditional services approach, and maybe just kind of give me your perspective on how you see it and how's it going. I know we just brought you into Tyson, so that was a big win for us, and maybe just tell me a little about how you see it.
Right, so over the past couple years, we've made the strategic decision that with how Microsoft was evolving and how O365 was evolving and just where SharePoint Online was going, we made the strategic decision within our practice of delivering services on top of that we wanted to move away from custom development, move away from a lot of the heavy kind of burdensome custom development that maybe we were typically used to, especially when we were talking around providing people intranets. Okay, so building out people's SharePoint Online. So the two approaches that you can go there is either go completely out of the box with everything, which will leave people with a very generic SharePoint experience. Or try to leverage some kind of managed service like BindTuning offers. And so we had looked around for some different tools and things that would be able to help us there, and it was a perfect fit because with the themes, with the web parts, it provides people a rich experience on top of SharePoint Online without having to build it. And so it's been successful. We love the product. We love what we've been able to do with it, how we've been able to leverage it, and we think it tells a good story of let's get away from the pretty the expensive, the time that it takes to build and deploy an intranet and do something that can be done much shorter and in a much more cost-effective way.
Yeah, what I think is interesting is both of our backgrounds is heavy custom development, and those cycles were months, sometimes years to deploy.
Yeah, and it's almost that big bang approach, right? So you spend a year or so doing the custom development around a custom intranet, you throw it out to people. What if they don't like it?
Yeah. And that happens,
and it happens all the time.
Yeah, but the people change, and I think Tyson was a great example. I mean, I think from talking and starting the deployment, it was we were in and out of there under 90 days, and really the core build piece was under 30 days, and
it was more about enabling them. It was more about and we've seen that change with O365 as well, and some of the new Microsoft services. It's more about understanding people's business cases, understanding people's use cases, and then mapping them into the features and functionality that's there in O365 versus kind of, we'll say, the old way of thinking of SharePoint and some of the previous tools.
So where do you see kind of the iteration here, or the future here, and where is it, what's the big inflection points that you see coming up on 365, and where does Dell fit in? What's the sweet spot for Dell?
Yeah, I think where we see things going in the future is we're going to hit a limit. So certainly part of our practice and part of what we do is around the core O365 infrastructure, email migrations, and certainly OneDrive for business migrations, SharePoint migrations. But that's going to hit a limit, right? Because everybody, the more and more you go into the future of O365, people are going to be there. So it's really a pivot in how you're providing services to organizations. It's more about enablement. It's more about helping them to understand. You've seen how many times that pinwheel of collaboration offerings and features and functionalities that are in O365. Well, how do we use them? How do we use Teams?
Yeah.
So it's partly that, and a big piece of that's going to be around compliance and governance. I know what Microsoft's advice typically is hey, you got everything available to you, just turn it on and
it works magically.
Right. Well, our approach is, well, let's put some governance in place. Let's help you establish all those things. So again, it goes back to it's more of those use cases, understanding that. So, more business analysts with the technical background and understanding of O365. So, we've been seeing that over the last year or so, and so within our practice, we've tried to make that transition and tried to be more reactive to that to be able to help people in those areas versus the traditional way that we were working.
Are you at all surprised? I mean, back in the day, everything in every enterprise was on-prem, and it was always in our data center, and that's the only way we're going to do it. And it seems like in the past 12 months, there's been a pretty big embrace of even the biggest customers going to the cloud and turning SharePoint Online on.
Yeah.
To your point, and has that surprised you at all? It's really, I mean, from my perspective, it was encouraging to see, and it seems to be just starting.
Yeah, I think we saw it getting there. It was slow at first, where right now what we're seeing is maybe 9 out of 10 opportunities that we're getting are purely with going to the cloud. So it's maybe only 1 in 10 customers, 2 in 10 customers that are coming to us and saying we're looking to say upgrade to SharePoint 2016. So we typically will have the conversation with them around, well, have you thought about going purely online, purely to leverage O365 and try to understand the reasonings why they're not there. But you're exactly right. Like in the healthcare industry, in the financial industry, they've been more open to going there, and I think it's based on a lot of the security that Microsoft's provided, a lot of the being able to meet the regulations and the compliance kind of standards and things that are out there. So I'm surprised it's gone as fast as it has. But like I said, at this point, 8 or 9 out of 10 people that we're meeting with, that's the direction they're going.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I talked to a lot of customers during the course of a month, and I'm like you. I'm like generally surprised when I'm talking to some of these very large, multinationals, and they're like, "Well, I got a team in Germany, and I got a team in the U.S., and just to put that infrastructure in place to support that between a 2-country connection is cost prohibitive now."
And with I think one of the announcements that we had talked about, so far. So traditionally SharePoint didn't play very well in kind of a geographically dispersed kind of scenario. So, you have APJ, you have, offices in EMEA, you have offices in, North America.
Right.
Where's that data sitting? How's it getting replicated? The speed in which people are able to access that. I think they're coming out with some solutions now within O365 to help that. But that's the perfect kind of scenario for, being able to combat that type of issue. I mean, it's
the world's changed, and I think Microsoft's doing a fairly good job of keeping up with that and making the privacy issues, forefront of what they're doing. But it's still, lots of inquiries about, hey, can we do this in this environment? And I think that's telling to where it's going.
It is, and you're probably remember maybe 2-3 years ago, conversations having with people was like, well, we can't have our data in the cloud,
right?
And that's just your data's out there.
Yeah, I don't want to name drop the CIO, but I was working on a big project, and this is back in my previous company days, and the CIO said, why would we ever use Microsoft's cloud? We host the biggest cloud in the world, and that's now they're there too. So it's kind of funny, and I think the total cost of ownership, which is an old school conversation point, and when we used to price things, is now it's a different model because we know our costs going in. It's a user cost. It's fairly fixed. So.
Yeah, and one of I'll say another difference that I've been surprised with over even over the past few months is typically, when we were having conversations with people that were getting into O365, the first workloads that they were putting out there would be email. Okay, right. Maybe email and OneDrive. So, doing kind of the core infrastructure, components, of course, but then, looking at email first is the first, workload that gets out there. But like we talked about Tyson, they were the exact opposite. Yeah. The first workload that they put out there was SharePoint Online.
That's great.
And that's and so we've been in a couple customer meetings since then where that's been the case, where they're looking at doing OneDrive for Business first, or looking at doing SharePoint first, and then later doing some of the Exchange. And email migrations.
Yeah, it always cracks me up when the company says we're not going to the cloud, but if they're hosting their email, and it's like, wait a minute, that's your most trusted data source, their email, and now you're telling me that. So.
Well, I think they're realizing too that if you're not providing some of these tools to people, they're going to go outside of IT to get them, and then that becomes even more of a compliance and security issue.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things, kind of coming back full circle to BindTuning, the themes that we build, fully responsive. So your millennials all the way up, they're getting their information on their phone or their iPad, and that's not exclusive of being at home or working remotely. That's at the office. They're doing these things on these different devices that, we're traditional PC guys, and we tend to use a PC for our work. But these, the millennial group, I see it every day. You go to these companies and they're like, I'm using my phone to respond to emails.
Yeah, I mean, they always talk about the evolving workforce. That's one kind of term that gets thrown around a lot, and that whole anywhere, anytime access on any device, right? And so, for something like with BindTuning, what we did at Tyson, it's make my SharePoint not look like SharePoint.
Right.
And in previous, it took a lot of time to do that. You had to factor it over a variety of different devices and, form factors. But, with the themes and the web parts that are available out there, it's just been awesome. It's just been a good solution.
It's been great. Well, it sure has been fun kind of reconnecting and
definitely
joining with Dell, and we're really excited about the second half of this year. We just became a Dell vendor finally,
awesome.
So we jumped through the hoops there, and that's been fantastic for us, and I think it's going to be a real successful partnership.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to leverage what we did at Tyson.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.